Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Music of the Mountains Jindo Dog Journeys. This is another music show where we are going to talk about the discography of English progressive band Porcupine Tree. Porcupine Tree is a band I think everyone should know about. If you're not familiar with them, I highly encourage you to get familiar with them immediately, if not sooner. So they are a band that I have liked for a long time, and after a long hiatus, they announced late last year that they have regrouped and they have a new album that will be coming out just a couple weeks from now. So I want to spend some time today going through their discography. I'm not going to do a ranking of their discography. I just want to use this opportunity to kind of have a discussion about what they've produced in the past, because I think there's a lot of people out there that have gotten into Porcupine Tree maybe within the last 10 years since they've been on hiatus. And I think it is worthwhile before the new album arrives, which is very anticipated by many people in the prog rock world, to take a moment and refamiliarize ourselves or get familiar with their past discography. That's what I want to do today. And I should say their discography is very complex. There is a lot there. You really have to be an archaeologist at some level if you really want to explore everything that they have created and released. There is a lot there. There's a lot there that's not on official release studio albums. So I'm going to touch on the main releases in their discography, maybe a couple of other things too. Okay, so Porcupine Tree began in the very late 80s, 1989, maybe 1990, by this English songwriter and musician named Stephen Wilson. This was all his brainchild and pretty much has been since its formation. And back in those initial days, he created, along with the input of or help from a couple of his friends, this fictional backstory about this fictional band called Porcupine Tree that was a band that existed in the 70s and had all of this backstory. I'm not going to go any farther into that. It was all made up. You can read about that online if you want. But he then started creating some music to provide evidence of Porcupine Tree's existence. And he created this himself, recorded it himself, and I think they were pretty lo-fi, low production recordings. And I'm not going to go into those very initial recordings. I think one was called Tarkin's Seaweed Farm. One was called Love, Death, and Mussolini. One was called The Nostalgia Factory. Basically, all of that predates their first official release, which was this album. It's called On the Sunday of Life. This was their first studio album, came out in 1992, and I think it more or less combines a lot of the songs that were on those very initial recordings that I just mentioned. This album is a quirky album. To me, it doesn't sound like anything else in the Porcupine Tree catalog. However, I kind of have at least a partial soft spot for about half the songs on this album. I think that's it's entertaining, it's quirky. Some of it is kind of, I don't know, almost post-punk, some of 80s post-punk pop, combined with 60s psychedelia. And if you listen to it, it's not the most well-produced piece of work in the history of music, but it is entertaining. Some of the standout tracks include songs like Nine Cats, The Nostalgia Factory, Jupiter Calling. A couple of others are pretty good on here too. then there's silly stuff like Message from a Self-Destructing Turnip. So take it for what you will. I kind of like it. Okay, so then we're moving on from there to the next couple of albums, which I do not own. One is called Up the Downstair, which was their second studio album. I believe it came out in 1993. And then the one that came out after that is called The Sky Moves Sideways. Again, I do not own either of these. I do have some of their songs that I got downloads, and I've listened to them. They're not my favorite Porcupine Tree albums. I think the music on there, for the most part, is very ambient, lots of soundscapes, lots of experimental ambient kind of music that, for me, is not my favorite kind of Porcupine Tree. There's a couple of songs I like on there a lot. I like Synesthesia on Up the Downstair. I like Dislocated Day on Sky Moves Sideways. But for me, they're just not at the top tier of Porcupine Tree albums. I don't own them yet. Maybe I will at someday. Someday I might eventually get them. But moving on from there, after that, they released this album, which is called Signify. I believe this was in 1996. And to me, this is kind of a step up in the overall quality of songwriting, arrangements, composition, and just kind of music that I like. It's still not probably a top tier Porcupine Tree album, but it's got some really good songs on here. The Waiting Suite, Waiting Phase 1 and Waiting Phase 2 is great. Sever is a great song. Dark Matter is just a transcendent number. It's fabulous and really, really good. But not my favorite. I'll just say that. From there, in their discography, I just wanted to mention this, the Coma Divine live album, which I believe came out in 97, 98. This is a fantastic live recording. I believe it was recorded in Italy. You have a collection of songs from those albums I previously mentioned on here, and I just think the quality of the live recording is excellent. And I should say, at this point, Porcupine Tree had developed into more of a full band. Like I previously mentioned, it was Steven Wilson's project initially. Over time, he incorporated other musicians, including fabulous keyboard named Richard Barbieri, who I believe was in a band previously called Japan, a bassist by the name of Colin Edwin, and then a drummer, their first drummer, Chris Maitland. And so by the time Coma Divine came out, they were touring as a band, they were recording as a band, although Steven Wilson, he was still steering the ship, writing the song, most of all the songs and composing all the music. So after Coma Divine, they released their next studio album, which is called Stupid Dream. This came out in 1999. I like this album. This has a lot of those kind of psychedelic moments, but they're really starting to move into an area where their music is maybe a little less, well, it still retains some ambient and psychedelic elements, but it's becoming a little more commercial, a little more pop friendly and oriented. This album has one of their bigger singles, Piano Lessons, on it. There's also some great tracks on here that I really like. Slave Called Shiver, Piano Lessons I mentioned, and one of my all-time favorite Porcupine Tree songs, A Smart Kid, which I believe was inspired by a story of this kid who is the last person on Earth after a nuclear war and then gets visited by aliens. Really fascinating stuff. Going on, next album in their discography was 2000's Lightbulb Sun, and this is another great album. I think the songwriting is even stronger on here than anything prior to it. The track Lightbulb Sun is great. How Is Your Life Today? Four Chords That Made a Million is another kind of minor hit for them at the time. Russia on Ice, one of my favorite Porcupine Tree songs, Hate Song, is on here. This is a great album. Okay. After that, we get to a release after Lightbulb Sun, which was called Recordings. This is a collection of recordings, basically tracks that didn't make Stupid Dream or Lightbulb Sun. Buying New Soul, that's a good song on here. Cure for Optimism, good track. Formaldehyde, some other good songs. But you kind of see, in my opinion, yeah, that's makes sense why they didn't make those other two studio albums. But still, if you're really into Porcupine Tree, I do recommend getting Recordings. And then we get to 2002. They signed to Atlantic, I think a subsidiary of Atlantic called Lava Records, and they released this, Absentia. This is a different animal than everything that preceded it. Absentia is when we have the first personnel change in the band, where Gavin Harrison joins the band as the drummer, replacing Chris Matlin. And this is where they start embracing prog metal more. You see and hear more of the metal influences in their sound. And this is a fabulous album. This has one of their biggest songs, The Sound of Music, on it. Of course, Blackest Eyes is a great song. Trains was a single, I think, that they released as well. Prodigal is great. Gravity Eyelids, The Creator, has a master tape. This is a very strong, top-tier, top-shelf Porcupine Tree album, followed by 2005's Dead Wing. This album features appearances from Opeth's Michael Ackerfeld. Him and Steven Wilson have had a long-time collaboration together. He provides some guest appearances on a couple of songs. Maybe my favorite all-time Porcupine Tree song on this album, in Arriving Somewhere But Not Here. Also, Shallow is great. Halo, Open Car, Mellotron, Scratch. Just a fabulous album. A lot of the album was inspired by ghost stories. In 2007, we get to one of their most commercially successful and critically acclaimed albums, Fear of a Blank Planet. This is an excellent album. The title track's wonderful. My Ashes is wonderful. It's got another one of my all-time favorite Porcupine Tree songs on it, and Anesthetize, as well as Way Out of Here. Alex Lifeson of Rush contributes a solo on Anesthetize to this. This was critically acclaimed. This was commercially successful for them. This is an excellent album. It sounds great. That's another strength of Steven Wilson's. Not only is he a great songwriter and a musician and a guitar player, he's a great producer. He creates great sound on his albums. They're very cinematic. Some of them are in 5.1 surround sound. Just excellent experiences to sit down and listen to. After Fear of a Blank Planet, we have this little EP that came out called Nil Recurring. It's kind of a collection of leftover tracks from Fear of a Blank Planet. My favorite track on here is Cheating the Polygraph. King Crimson's Robert Fripp also plays on here on one song. And then in 2009, we have The Incident. I believe this was their most commercially successful album. I really like this. I like this album. I think I like an Absentia and Dead Wing and Fear of a Blank Planet a little more, but this has some great songs on it too, like Octane Twisted, I'll Drive the Hearse, Bonnie the Cat. And then they went on a long hiatus after The Incident came out, and Steven Wilson did a lot of solo albums. I think he's produced about 6 or so in that time. And then in late 2021, they announced they were reuniting, and later this month, in June 2022, their highly anticipated new album, Closure Continuation, comes out. The first songs I've heard off of it, I love. I can't wait. I hope this has been helpful for everyone. Let me know what you think of Porcupine Tree, what your impressions of them are, and let's keep our fingers crossed that the new album is successful and they will be back with us for a long time. Take care, everyone. We'll see you again soon.